Hello. Alright, so I need to make it entirely clear. I did not intend to make this video, at least not to post on this platform, but there's a certain clock app that has annoyed me to the point where if I'm going to talk about this book at length, then I'm gonna do it here because I'm over it. I'm over it. Hi, if we've never met before, I apologize for what comes next. If we have met before, it's so lovely to see you again. My name is Chase, and I am an avid consumer of media. And so today, I really want to talk about this book called To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monica Blackgoose. I think this was her debut novel. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I'm right. This is her debut novel. Monica is a member of the Wampanoag tribe, and her debut novel is appropriately reflective of not just her life as an indigenous woman, but also of the history of her people. I do need to preface the remainder of this video with the fact that I am a white presenting person, despite having mixed heritage. I am not Native. I never have been, and there's nothing, and as far as I know, that's not going to change anytime soon. So from the point of view of someone who is an outsider, I adore this book. There are a lot of works that have been coming out in the past couple of years that all take place in the either late 1700s outside of America, but during the Revolutionary period, or in America in the mid 1800s. This is one such book. The other two that come to mind are Babel, which is again the perspective of a non-white person in a colonizer's world, and A Declaration of the Rights of Independence for Magicians, which has split perspectives of a combination of people who are traditionally white and Anglican, and some people who are not. I'll leave it at that. This is the first that I have read that is from the point of view of a Native American person, and is entirely from their viewpoint. And now I'm gonna gush. Quick plot synopsis. Our main character is Anakus. She is a young woman from the remote island of Masquepog, which, as far as we can tell, as someone who, in this fictionalized version of America, is, it's New England. In this world, there are dragons. Dragons are not pervasive. They are still the nuclear weapons of creatures that we have come to associate them to be, especially since Game of Thrones came out. And they are largely controlled by white people. And in this case, those white people are very, very strongly coded to be a majority of Viking descent, which creates, and this is a quick tangent, the general surroundings for how this world came to be, insofar as it's pretty clear that while they are described as being English, as in English with an A, they are very clearly Nordic and Viking. They have jarls and thanes, and they very clearly celebrate holidays that are Nordic in origin. It opens a lot of doors into the question of how this world came to be. My personal theory is that because the Norse had dragons and they were the most warmongering of the people, they overtook any others that might have tried to compete with them, and then eventually took over the quote-unquote new world. You know what, I'm getting into the weeds. Anakus is a young woman from the remote island of Masquepog, a island that has not seen a dragon in generations. That is, until one day she is out collecting mussels to bring home to her family and sees a dragon fly off in the distance, no rider, going west of west into where the sun sets. And she comes home and she's like, hey, that was pretty cool. Wonder what that means. It's time to do a little bit of world building and talk about how dragons all bond with riders generally, and when they lose their rider, they become extremely sad. And now that you mention it, this dragon seemed an incredibly depressed creature, and so all the elders are like, you should probably go and make an offering at the ruins of an old ceremonial place in honor of this dragon, whether it was a vision or not. And so that is exactly what she does. The next morning she wakes up at dawn, she paddles out, and she travels to this to the far spit of the island where a ruined temple stands. There are a lot of questions that we, the reader, will then promptly have. Who built this temple? Was it your people? And if it was your people, why does no one seem to remember? Why did it fall into ruin? What's the deal there? We don't get answers to that. What we do get answers to is the dragon was there to lay an egg. And so Anakus comes home bearing an egg, bearing a dragon's egg. And as per their tradition, they bring it into the middle of the community and they sing songs and they dance around the egg and essentially take this incubating child and bring it into the community immediately and fill it with warmth and love and the stories of the people that it will be a part of. And so we are introduced to the first really fun framing device that becomes really common in this book, which is we are just told folk stories. A chapter will be called "And so this person told this story to Anarchus." And I think that's really fun. It's a wonderful way to world build different cultures' perspectives on dragons, because that is what every single story that we hear is about. Every single one is about a dragon in some way. And on top of that, it's just a neat storytelling device. When the egg hatches and the dragon comes tumbling out, the entire village is there. Everyone is there to encourage it and sing to it as she bursts out of the shell and looks around at all the people who've been kind to her and who have protected this egg, and stares at Anarchus and chooses her to be her rider. And so this dragon, called a Nampeshaway, picks its rider, who becomes Nampeshawayassit, which is where we get the title for the entire series. It's the Nampeshawayassit books. We get more context as to like what that really means later on, but as far as we know right now, that means that these two are bonded for life. Our main character is a dragon rider. She will wield the dragon's breath, otherwise known as the shapeless medicine, because in the words of her people, a dragon's breath is change. And the best part about these books is that is a very poetic thing to say, and then we get into the details and kind of go, yeah, a dragon is able to literally break apart the fundamental molecules of things and put it back together in a new way. A dragon's breath is a medicine that is literally change. Everything in this book is incredibly well thought out, and that is the first example of it. Here's the thing. We have not been introduced to two major figures in Anarchus's life. Her father, who's a whaler, who at the time of this hatching, which is August, is away in the North Sea hunting whales, as a whaler should want to do. The other major character who we don't get a chance to see yet is her older brother Nikiad, who has gone to live on the mainland with the Englishmen and the other white people because he wants to be a tinkerer, he wants to be an engine craftsman, he wants to create things. Again, that theme of change. And he kind of goes, oh, oh my god, you found a dragon and you didn't tell anyone? Oh my god, this could be terrible and everyone could be killed if we don't do something immediately. And so he shows up out of nowhere. He's like, hey, you gotta go. You gotta go to dragon school. And here's the next fun part. Here's a selling point. If you read Fourth Wing and kind of went, this could be better, I'm not super into whatever kind of romance is going on here, and I wish that this dragon school was just a little bit cooler and a little bit more realistic, I've got some news for you. I have a better book for you to read. I'm not gonna say that Fourth Wing is bad. Fourth Wing is like ACOTAR to me. I'm just gonna leave it at that. After a lot of discussion, there is a problem where Kasakwa is the name of the dragon, gets frightened, and she, for the first time ever, loses a breath and nearly burns Anarchus's sister alive and decimates an entire beach area. And Anarchus, who is 15 and incredibly intelligent, goes, hey, that's a problem. Nikiad says that if I don't show up in the mainland, then there's a chance that everyone will get killed. And more importantly, it's not that I want to leave, but we haven't had a dragon rider in generations. We don't have anyone who knows our ways, who can teach me how to safely be the caretaker and partner to this dragon, to this nuclear weapon that is as cuddly as a kitten. I need to go to these colonizers, because if I don't, then she could kill everyone by accident. And we can't have that. I need to go and learn everything that I can so that I can be worthy both of her and of my people. And that is why Anarchus is the best. She's just phenomenal. She cuts through all the bullshit. She's like, I understand both the animosity towards these people. There should be that. I understand the problems with not going. I understand why I should stay with my family. But also, if I don't, everything will go far worse, and I want to learn everything that I possibly can. And so she does. And that is where I'm going to start recording for right now. What, you never go out with friends and then you come back and finish filming your video? Thank you to Guinness Stout for sponsoring this week's video. You did not consent to the sponsorship, but I appreciate it anyway. Time to Cascade. Where did I leave off? Cool. It took me as long as it took me the length of rewatching my last footage for the Cascade to finish. So thank you again to Guinness. So Anna flies off to the mainland to go to Dragon School. Before she can do that, she sent off her application, and Frau Kuiper of Frau Kuiper's Academy for Dragoneering shows up on the island. And this is this imposing, super cool, older woman who fucking Alana the Lioness her way into becoming a chief Dragoneer. She hid herself as a boy and managed to get into a room with a dragon egg and was chosen by her dragon, and then was later outed like a couple years later. She literally Alana the Lioness her way into becoming like the most badass chick on the entirety of the coast. And this is where I gush about the way that the way that our author wrote every single like antagonistic person that we get to know even a little bit well. Yes, Frau Kuiper seems like a hard ass because she is. Yes, she seems prejudiced because she is, but also at the end of the day, she does legitimately want to see people like Annakus come up in the world. She wants to see her succeed more than anything else. Is her definition of success and doing better tied to how quote-unquote civilized and English she is? Yeah, no doubt. Like, what, there's like 100% that is part of her definition for what it is to succeed, is how English can she pretend to be, how well can she get along in polite society, as it were. The answer is not very well, if only because Annakus has no time for that nonsense. Anyway, back to the plot. Lady shows up and she's like, you gotta be here. It's kind of fucked up that y'all didn't tell us that you had a dragon egg, upon which all the elders were like, how, literally, how could we have? We didn't know we were supposed to, 1. 2, we don't like have a local representative. And she's like, sure you do. Everyone does. And they're like, we got someone who collects our taxes, but like, we never voted for that guy, whoever that guy happens to be. And this is another running theme. There's a bug in here. That's so goddamn rude. That's so rude. Anyway, Annakus packs her bags and shows up to the academy. She shows up to the academy and immediately is greeted by like a cadre of different teachers who test her, and we get to listen to them talk about, wow, I'm so surprised about how eloquent you are, and I'm shocked that you know how to read. And she's like, yeah. What is wrong with you people? Why would you assume I'm of low intelligence? Like, that is so awful and such an automatic thing to think of someone. And they're like, yeah, well, you're not white, so like we just kind of assume that you're dumb. It is the next day. My camera died. I'm sorry. Also took a shower when I blew out my hair. Tell me, do you think my hair looks better when it's curlier or when it's blown out like this? I know what the answer is. You don't need to tell me. Call me pretty anyway. Moving on from where we were. Annakus goes through all the necessary testing and they figure out, oh my god, that's wild. She's like not stupid. Like, she just doesn't know some things. This crazy thing that happens when a kid doesn't go to standardized schooling is they don't know all the things that you would expect someone to know who is school age. That's just kind of how that works. It's institutionalized nonsense. It's a lot. Anyway, it's in these next couple of days that we meet more of our main characters. And you remember where I said that Frau Kuiper is really interesting because she's allowed to be like really multi-dimensional and have a lot of character to her? That is the same for like literally everyone. We knew that before Annakus showed up that she would be staying with another girl. There is a far lower amount of women who are dragon riders than there are men, because this is a sexist world. Big shock, historical fantasy, we are dealing with sexism. It's not the first time, it's not the last time. So there are only 2 girls who are going to be at the academy this year, and that would be Annakus and this girl, Marta. And Marta's like, oh my god, babe, we got to go have lunch in the city before term starts. And Annakus is like, who's this bitch who has like train fare to go everywhere? And anyway, That's where we get the first instance of like pure classism, and then it just keeps trucking on from there. I really appreciate the character of Marta for the same reason that I appreciate the character of Frau Kuiper, in that she is not a one-dimensional antagonist. In a lot of lesser books, Marta would be the white girl who is rich and annoying and is cruel and just a pure antagonist. But that's not the case. Manukil accurately ascertains the fact that just because someone is ignorant doesn't mean they're a bad person necessarily. And more importantly, if you live with someone day in and day out and you sleep 3 feet away from each other, it doesn't actually matter whether or not you like them. You're gonna figure out how to get along no matter what. And what's more, Anarchus makes it clear from day one, she doesn't care for the English idea of what high society is. That's not her business. She is here to learn how to properly be Kosakwa's handler, and that is it. She doesn't want to integrate. She doesn't want to assimilate. She wants to go back to her people and bring them all the knowledge that she has stolen from the colonizers. And honestly, we love that for her. This never changes. She never has a moment where she's like, actually, maybe I look really pretty in this corset. Maybe I should stay. There's never some white guy that she meets where she's like, actually, maybe I will change and I'll stick around here. That never happens. And it's delicious. I say this all because, again, Marta is a well-rounded character. She is fully fleshed out. She has an odd place in society for being both a Dragoneer and a woman of high society. And so every time that she has an interaction with Anarchus, they're butting heads with expectations both for themselves and each other. Anarchus has been a woman this entire time. She is considered an adult in her community. She doesn't need to be told what is right and proper. She doesn't need to be told how to live her life. Meanwhile, her peer is very much still a child who doesn't quite know where they fit into society, and she is allowed to grow. Is she perfect by the end of the book? No. No, of course she's not. But is she allowed to grow, and is she allowed to not be a villain? Also yes. And speaking of white people that Anarchus becomes friends with, we have another main character, Xander. This kid shoots the moon past autism coded to being just autistic. He is a smart kid who doesn't do well with speaking, just period. He has a bunch of vocal tics. He needs to fidget with things most of the time, and even falls into that good old-fashioned stereotype of this autistic kid is good with animals and also is good with numbers. I am not of that community. I can't really speak to like how accurate it is, but he is a great character, and seeing him grow and flourish with the help of Anarchus as they are friends. They are both underestimated and looked down upon by their peers. It's lovely. It's nice seeing him get to be a happy person, and we even get to flesh out his and Marta's relationship. Marta and Xander's older sister have been childhood friends. Like, they've been good friends for a very long time, while Xander was just kind of always there. Because of Anarchus and because of their triple friendship, that bond between these two people that otherwise might have been friendly at best becomes a true friendship, and we get to see them grow as people together. Xander never has an issue with the racism thing, and I don't know if it's because he's genuinely just a better person who is used to being discriminated against, or if it's like a mistake on the idea of the purity of someone who is neurodivergent. But I'm going to be charitable and say it's because he's just better than everyone else around him, and leave it at that. On the topic of societal expectations of parents, Xander deals a lot with a mother who would love nothing more than for either him to be quote-unquote normal and to not need to scribble away in a notebook to communicate, or for him to be locked in an attic, never to be let out. His father, unfortunately deceased, paid a lot of money to make sure that he could have access to a dragon egg so he could be a Dragoneer, because that line of work seemed like it would be the best fit for his talents as well as his limitations. And you know what? Props to his father for recognizing that. Unfortunately, he is dead by the beginning of the book, and so we get to deal with mommy issues, mommy issues. Everyone has mommy issues. All the side characters have mommy issues. Speaking of the dragon eggs, though, we haven't talked about how the English, how they characterize the choosing of a dragon's rider. So we've seen how Kosakwa was hatched. We have seen that she was laid in the wild without the say-so of a human. She was brought into a human's community. She was promptly told stories and was brought into the fold. Kosakwa's hatching and incubation was an affair of community. It was a coming together of an entire group of people to love and cherish a new child, essentially. We find out that what the norm is for the colonizers is you might procure an egg Like, you might be friends with another dragon rider, and you will pay them an exorbitant amount for the egg. And then you lock it in a room, and the one, maybe two, if you're crazy, maybe even 3 candidates that you want to be presented to the egg might go in and tell it stories and whatever and read to it over the time of its incubation. At the time when they realize it's going to start hatching and the crack starts to form, that is when the potential companions would then be led into the room, and at that point the dragon would make its selection of who it was going to be bonded with. This is notable to know because, one, it means that having a dragon is a status symbol. It's how we know that pretty much everyone who's at the academy are wealthy by the pure nature of the fact that they could afford an egg at all. But it's also a need-to-know fact when looking at both the character introduction and backstory of our final dragoneering pal, and that would be young Theod Necht. Young Theod, what is his actual full name? One moment. I'm so sorry. I don't actually know if it's Net or Necht. Theod Necht. Our final dragoneering pal is a Mr. Theod Necht. He is also indigenous and had a far different upbringing than our main character. See, we are informed that prior to the beginning of our story, there was an uprising on the sister island to Mascopog. Naquizit had been, much like Mascopog continued to be, in that it used to be just indigenous people until someone found that there was coal lying under the island, at which point the colonizers showed up and manifest destiny all over the place, and there was some casual murder and some casual poisoning of the grain silo or whatever. Long story short, the only people who live there now are either elderly or very young. Everyone else was massacred. One such example of those people would be the couple who were parents to Theod. His mother was able to escape the gallows because she was pregnant at the time, and then the day after she gave birth was put to death. Because you really can't and shouldn't have a story about colonialism and the interaction between colonizers and indigenous peoples without talking about how indigenous peoples are treated in a murder way by the white people. You can't not have it would be disingenuous and bad. Either way, Theod, of course, was then raised by the state. He was bought as an indentured servant to some rich man's household. And so the day that guy's kids were being presented to a dragon, the dragon looked at these 2 children and said, I don't like it, and ran out the door, slipped past everyone. This poor kid, this poor teenager, is sitting in the kitchen, washing dishes or whatever, having as good a life as he can expect, and then suddenly a dragon barrels in, and they are emotionally bonded and have a telepathic link now, and he is put into prison because he just stole a dragon. Which, no, he didn't. He was there. He was handed a life made out of shit, and he was doing his best to make some flowers grow in it. In his own words, he would never trade his connection to his dragon in a million years. Theod also has some incredibly internalized self-hatred because he was raised being told that he was a trash baby made of trash whose parents were murderers and who could never expect to be anything other than a trash. And, that is a lot that you need to unlearn, and that's a lot of self-hatred that you need to hope for the best to get rid of. He's been told his whole life he's stupid. He showed up to the academy not knowing how to read, and suddenly Anakus's treatment makes a little more sense, but only a little bit, because they never expected any better of her in the first place. And we get to see this kid who, in his own words, does not expect to be anything more than a servant to this institution. He doesn't expect to ever graduate. He expects to be tied to this place for the rest of his life. And we watch as Anakus gives him hope and helps him figure out that you, one, deserve to want more for yourself, that these people were wrong to treat you this way, and what's more, Mascopog is still around. Kid, you probably still have family if you want to go find them. And so his journey is Like, I'm glad that he's not the main character, because this would be a far less funny and way more depressing book if it was. I'm glad that we have Anakos as our main character. But God, that poor kid. I'm so glad of where he gets to end up in the end. Other side characters who don't get as much of a shine in this book as I hope they will in future books include a black girl called Liberty, who isn't quite a slave, but her parents both were, and she is an indentured servant who is trying to work her way out of her debt. Love that for her. She's super cool. Total lesbian. Sick. We get to have Nikiot, as an Anakos' brother, has several friends that he hangs out with, including a girl who it's implied that she is Muslim. She is monotheistic in a way that no one else is, and so she's got to be Abrahamic in some way or another. We don't get to hear a huge amount about her. We do get some of her stories, some of her folk tales from her point of view. It's just not entirely clear which flavor of monotheistic, and I'm not going to make any assertions one way or another. The audiobook gave her like almost a Middle Eastern sounding accent, so I'm tempted to say Muslim, but I don't actually know. Let me look it up real quick. That is the problem with me trying to talk about this book, is that there's not a big enough community online for me to give ready answers. She is. Her name is Gina, and she is Muslim. Cool. Also, really weird that to find a lot of this information, I'm going on TV Tropes, which is where most of the information on characters and nonsense from this book are. It is a major reason for why I'm making this video. I want more people to talk about this book. When was this published? God, it was published this year? It was published 2 months ago. Oh, no wonder there's no community for it right now. Let's help with that. Let's make that better. Holy moly. I can't even really get into the plot, because the thing is, this isn't... If this was more of a traditional YA novel, like, yes, Anakos is 15 years old. This is not a YA novel, though. This is 100%, like, at best, it's an emerging adult kind of book. It is way more intelligent than that would give it credit. That's not even fair. It's not YA in that I don't think that it would sit well on a shelf beside Fourth Wing. I know I made that comparison earlier, and I stand by it, mostly because of the content and the age of the characters, but the thing about it is that Anakos is in the eye of her people and herself, she is an adult. And this book treats her that way, and treats the fact that other people don't see her, value her as an adult, or see her as a person who is capable of making her own decisions. And so that conflict of self, or rather that conflict of perception, is ingrained within this book. It's a combination of ageism, of racism, as well as sexism. She is a woman, so she cannot make her own decisions. She is Naki, otherwise known as indigenous, so she cannot make her own decisions. She is a child. She cannot make her own decisions. That is not her perception. That's not her parents' perception. The only person of her people who treats her as a child is her father, ironically enough, who we do meet later on, and he only really treats her that way. Like, you can make an argument that the reason why he still treats her as a child isn't even necessarily by any fault of her own. He is away most of the year. He's away longer. When they're talking about her going off to school, she says out loud, the amount of time that I would be away at the academy is less than father would be. Like, he is out of the house. He's off the island, not at sea, not like 75% of the year. He's bringing home their entire income all at once. So it's different. And you could make an argument that because he doesn't see her as often, he doesn't see her as a full adult, whether that's because she's not married, or because doesn't look like a grown-up yet, or even if it's just the small fact of guilt of he hasn't seen her grow up, and so therefore he can't treat her as an adult. That's also there, but he is the only person who isn't white who treats her that way. If this was more of a traditional young adult novel, a lot of the plot would be centered around the bullying of students against Anakos. It would be dealing with the logistics of going to class and of the drama that unfolds during a given class day. Do we get some of that? Absolutely. But the bigger conflict that comes throughout this entire book is of total public perception. It's not just how she's treated in school. Anarchus is seen by the people as being a social experiment. There is constantly articles being written about her and of Theode because of these curiosities. It's people talking about, wow, did Frau Kuiper trying to let these gross barbarians get a hold of these nuclear weapons? Is she trying to make them think that they're people? These aren't people. We need to remind these people that they're not people and that we're better than them and racism. Whether someone's writing an editorial because they have a kid who's also going to Frau Kuiper's academy and they're like, I'm the proud father of a boy. I don't think that women should have rights. Like, that happens several times. Several instances happen where, with the help of the headmistress, Anarchus is placed into situations where she can be seen by people who are going to be documenting an event. Where she can be seen by people in power and be like, oh, look at me, a monkey doing a trick. I'm not an idiot. And here we are. Here's another example of me doing my best to hold my tongue in front of these white people, while at the same time, my name is Anarchus, I'm not great at that. I'm not going to be a dick about it, but I am not going to look at you and lie to your face and tell you what a good little monkey trainer you are, and I am perfectly happy to sit here and do your tricks. It's like everyone wants her to be a creature at the circus who is slowly going from an animal and being turned into a person. It's fascinating and awful, and I love the way that it's written. So no, I can't really get into the point-by-point details because so much of this story just needs to be read by itself. It is a great example of how to write a young adult story in a way that is more intelligent than how do I phrase this? I think there is a lot of value to be had from people who are the same age as Anarchus reading this book, but I wouldn't call them the target audience for this series. This is just a good story. The amount of world building in this story is good enough by itself. I cannot wait to see other cool dragons. Like, I mean, I'm a simple woman at heart. I want cool women and I want cool dragons. I like the number of queers that we get to have. I want more of them. I want so many queers in this story. Anarchus is confirmed bisexual and probably polyamorous as well. I love that. I love it for her and I love that for me. I want to see Marta grow more as a character to the point where she can be a better ally. I want to see more of the random, like, shitty boys get more comeuppance. Because, frankly, I didn't get enough of it. I'm glad it was either edited out or not there at all. We don't need it in this story. I am so much happier that we got to deal more with Anarchus telling off the handful of teachers who are shitty to her. I'm happy about that. I also want to see some of these guys get their dicks bitten off. I'm not gonna lie. I am a simple woman with simple needs. I want to see her brother succeed and become the engineer that he wants so desperately to be. And I want to see him forge a better relationship with his father. Everyone in this book has either daddy issues or mommy issues or both. Even Anarchus. To a much lesser degree. Like, if you ask me to tell you what her daddy and mommy issues are, I'm not sure I could tell you, because if they're there, they're pretty deep-rooted. I think she just has issues with people in general who don't treat her well, and her parents treat her pretty darn well. I want to know what Kisako looks like when she grows up, and I want to see her compete in dragon races. I want there to be an aerial obstacle course, and I want her to kill it. I want to see where this book is going, and I want to get to the end and enjoy every moment of the journey. I want to see Anarchus fly out into the west and get to meet other indigenous people and their dragons and learn more about how they do dragoneering. And here's a really fun part and like the crux of the entire thesis of the book, which is, I don't even want to say there's a thesis to the book. There's a moment in this book that encapsulates all of its values in one fell swoop, and that is, we know that Anarchus 100% wanted to go off to dragon school because she wanted to learn how to shape a dragon's breath. She wanted to learn how to make it so that Kisako with a nuclear weapon is at least a nuclear weapon in a containment field with her around. And so we do get to learn some of that lore. We get to learn a little bit about what they call skill to craft. It's the way that you draw like runes or symbols to be able to take your dragon's breath and direct it in a given way. It's a lot of rune drawing, usually on like a football field sized area. It's super neat. And then you listen to the professor talk about it and you go, oh, it's chemistry. You're talking about chemistry. You're describing a periodic table right now, but it's like it's steampunk chemistry. Sick, dope, love it. And so at one point in our story, and here's a minor spoiler, so skip to this time code right now if you don't want to hear it, but Atticus goes home briefly for reasons that are plot related, and is trying to, and this is right before finals, and so she tries to explain to others what she's been learning as she's trying to study. And in this case, she's talking about Skiltcraft. She's talking about that chemistry. And in doing so, she starts like drawing out the runes that she needs to learn. And in doing so, after some conversation, she realizes that these runes look a lot like the dances that her people do for various ceremonies. The one they use as an example is traditionally done before the first planting in springtime, and it's the corn planting dance. And she realizes that, wow, if you were to look at that dance from an overhead view, like for an example from a dragon's point of view, it would look a lot like the same runes and symbols that you would use to make the elements that you would then put into the earth to fertilize it better, which is such a revelation and the best encapsulation of talking about how her people's culture has been attemptedly erased. Because of course, if you're not coming from a culture that has a written language necessarily, where all of your traditions are passed down orally, then no, you wouldn't have runes in the same way that the English would. But just because you don't have that doesn't mean you didn't figure out how to wield a nuclear weapon yourself. And it's not in an incredibly different way. It's just one that is, again, indicative of the cultures in which they come from. It's not individualistic. It's not one person creating one piece of art. It's instead a community coming together to create the symbol necessary to then enact change on a large scale. And I'm sure the next book we're going to have the pleasure of seeing exactly how that works in a practical setting. But for right now, all we know is that she's had an Einstein moment, and oh my god, don't tell the white people. If you do, I'm sure that we're gonna end up dead, or they're gonna want to come out to the island and study us or whatever, and they don't see us as people, so why would we let them do that? So yeah, if you want what I would call a hard fantasy, then I'd recommend this book. If you want a book that is an exploration of an indigenous person's point of view, I would recommend this book. If you liked Babel, I'd recommend this book. If you liked the Declaration of Independence for Magicians, I'd recommend this book. If you liked Fourth Wing, I'd recommend this book. If you liked Aragorn, but want something a little more grounded, I'd recommend this book. There's a couple other people. I think also if you like Brandon Sanderson, I'd recommend this book for the nature of how the world building works. I think you'd probably appreciate this, even though I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison. If you like Gideon the Ninth, I think you'd also like this book. Again, not because of like similar themologies, but the writing style and the amount of like forethought and thinking that you would need to put into it is equitable. Also, it's gay, which Brando Sando probably wouldn't like very much, but you know who would? Tamsin Ware. That's gonna do it for us though. If you like this video. If you like me, subscribe. I'd appreciate it. It's very helpful. If you really like this video, then subscribe to my Patreon down below. You'll get early access to these videos, and you'll get access to scripts for the more long-form videos that I have available, and you can help me decide on future topics and make book recommendations. I will even give you the right to complain. If you don't subscribe to my Patreon, you're not allowed to complain. You've all been so lovely to hang out with. I'm gonna need you to do me a quick favor and to drink some water. That's my favor today. I want you to get up and go grab whatever liquid is nearby. It doesn't need to be water. Just hydrate yourself in some way. Go to the bathroom and drink out of the toilet bowl if you need to. Just hydrate. It's important. It's good for your skin. Bye!